Hey guys, welcome to book review number 82, I believe. Today I will be reviewing Delhi Adventures in a Megacity by Sam Millar. Okay, so this book is kind of an interesting book. It's a take on the city of Delhi, as the name would recommend, where the author, Sam, goes in concentric circles, or spirals, around the city of Delhi, venturing into its most famous sites, its slums, its suburbs, its nondescript regions. And really that's what makes, I think, this book pretty tremendous, in its randomness of the choice of the spiral, the way that he appraised the city of Delhi. He really gets a good cross-section of what the city is, not merely just its famous sites, but kind of its locality or its personality as well. So just a couple things. He obviously, the famous sites he visits Gandhi's tomb. Now, something interesting about Gandhi is everyone knows Mahatma Gandhi, the famous Gandhi, that was the freedom fighter that died in 1947. But the Gandhi dynasty family was actually a different, even though they had the same last name, they were not related. This being Jarora Gandhi. I know I got that wrong. And IWIN Inwara Gandhi. Apologize for the cars, you guys. And so he visited some of those sites. I should really have bookmarked these pages before. But yeah, he starts out sort of in the center of the city in concentric circle. Let's see. The center of the new metro system in Delhi, which hopes to alleviate some of the crowding in the city, some of the congestion, some of the traffic problems. But as mentioned a couple times in the book, whenever you see improvements in city infrastructure, it always encourages more people to live in a more densely confined space. So it's kind of like chicken or the egg. Are you improving services, or are you just encouraging more people to move into the city? We actually even met a cynic in the book that essentially said, more or less, the city needs to stop improving services to discourage people from, the poor rural countryside of India to move into Delhi. It's estimated that Delhi's population right now is anywhere between, I think, like 17 and 23 million people. This being so hard to determine, partially because there are so many migrant, transient workers. It's not a city that, it's a city that has a lot of illegal housing, a lot of tenement housing, stuff like that. But he also, like I said, he sees some of the famous sites. He sees the Red Fort. He says the Red Fort is only, okay in terms of sites. What's really amazing about Delhi is not the 2 or 3 Mughal sites, or even like late Mughal, 1700, 1600 forts that have emerged as sort of the large tourist areas. But actually some of the older forts that are essentially crumbling and nobody visits, and that he kind of feels like he has an insider's perspective when he sees some of these forts. Now, I wish I had some of the names of them. I really should have bookmarked this ahead of time. Let's see, he also mentioned that there was something, Digital Mahara. There was this one fort that he went to that has now become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but he said in his youth was actually overgrown and nobody went there. Which was, he said, the inspiration for what eventually became the Taj Mahal, Ludlow Castle. Well, in any case, besides seeing the famous sites, he also sees, like hospitals, morgues. He actually saw a crematorium that, although having all the modern fixtures, had almost no, dead people, their family members, take their deceased relatives to there because of superstition about just the process of cremation in sort of these modern facilities. Now, that's not because Indians are afraid of cremation. Matter of fact, the vast majority of Indians get cremated. But they prefer the more traditional method, where in an open pyre with using wood on an open platform where everyone can see it, the body gets burned next to a river, and then the ashes are scattered in the river, that being one of the more famous traditions in India. Let's see, he meets a human yo-yo, cannibals. Early on he mentioned he saw some hippies. That's kind of what I am with reading all this stuff, but he said that they were all just sort of disgruntled because of kind of the perceived slights of Delhi, it being the dysentery capital of the world, quote unquote. The author is spat at. Yeah, he encounters some schemes, takes some pictures, street artists, meets an asthmatic goat. He's chased by feral pigs. He visits the dump, including at the dump scavengers or pickers that are like the lowest members of society, that make just a few dollars a day, pulling rags and stuff out of the garbage. And actually, one of the guys there, he said that even though you would think they would be discontent, they're not actually discontent. Well, I mean, I'm sure they'd like to better their circumstances, but they're more content than what you would think. There's joy and happiness, even among the kids running around, all this debris at the dump. But one of the things he did say is why the people that worked at the dump were so dissatisfied is all the good stuff had previously been picked out by, the house servants that threw away rich people's garbage, the garbage collectors, any sort of middleman in the process of getting bad stuff to the dump. So by the time stuff got to the dump, there was really very little value left in the trash, and it was up to these sort of bottom level people in society to get their stuff or make a source of living out of the dump. In contrast, he also visits some very wealthy regions, primarily being in South Delhi. And what's interesting is sort of how the middle class try to imitate the upper class. So really what I would say the upper class of Delhi would be the South Delhi region. I'm trying to look like specifically what I'm looking for here. Yeah, and there's like this whole sort of, Delhi obviously being the capital, or New Delhi being the capital of India, there's this whole bureaucracy that kind of develops. And really in India, it's not a communist state, here we go, but it is the sort of, what am I saying here? Well, I'm looking at the presidential palace here. Okay, so it's not a communist state, but it's not where until very recently the private sector were the ones that got rich, or at least lived in a luxurious lifestyle. Really, the biggest thing that bureaucrats fight about, particularly mid to upper mid-level bureaucrats fight about in the Indian government, is not being advocates for their people. It's oh man, we only got 6 minutes. Is not being advocates for their people. No, we're at 9 minutes. Sorry, guys. Not being advocates for their people. There's also a lot of mosquitoes out here. But enriching themselves, making sure that they have the best bungalows. The Indian government sets aside this really nice kind of leafy, suburban, very well manicured region for all the elected diplomats and bureaucracy of the Indian government. And that's primarily what the people that get elected to Congress or to the Indian Parliament fight over, is self-enrichment, if you will. Oh, he talks about he went to a meat market where they kill cows. This being in the Muslim quarter, obviously Hindus don't kill cows being a sacred animal, but sort of the kind of viciousness of the butchers, all that kind of stuff, and how they were laughing, kind of the surliness of that class of people. He talks about multiple films that kind of he recreated in his own mind through the region. Let's see, what else? I think the Jama Masjid, that might be the famous building that was the equivalent of the Taj Mahal. Railway station, famous mosque. What else? Visits a Jewish graveyard. I will say, I know I've just been kind of rambling about all this stuff. One of the reasons that it's kind of hard to define this book is, as I said, it covers a whole bunch of different regions. And I think really the strength of the book is not that any one section is particularly mind-blowing, but the author, Sam, is very strident, that being a double entendre both in his writing and the fact that, I forgot to mention, he walked this entire loop around the outside. He's very strident in his observations. Not, I wouldn't say phenomenal writing, but kind of just chipping off the old block, just time after time after time, until the totality of it is really a book that you really do get a sense of what Delhi is. You know, from the Yamamura River, that is unlike Venice or the Seine or the Danube, is actually an eyesore, and nobody wants to visit the canals of Bangkok, for example. Nobody wants to visit the Yamamura in Delhi because of how polluted and mosquito-ridden and just terrible it is. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I've been rambling. This hasn't been a great review, but Sam Miller, Adventures in a Megacity. Check it out. It's a good book. It's a fun book. That's the other thing I should mention. It's not so obscure or kind of hard to read. It's a very easy read in terms of a book. You really get a sense of what Delhi is in a very sort of pedestrian, there's another double entendre, in a very pedestrian way as he walks around the city in these spirals. And you really get a good sense of Delhi, kind of at a, I wouldn't say an introductory level, but at a level that is very accessible to the general public. So anyway, Delhi, Adventures in a Megacity. Check it out, you guys. It's a good book. All right, peace.